Welcome to Richland Farm, everybody. I know many of you, but not all of you. I'm Arthur Francis Jr., and somewhere my sisters, Amy Francis and Wesley Francis, and this is what means so much to us, our farm. I am not a historian at all. I'm just now starting to appreciate the history of this place. What means a lot to me is our parents bought this in 1970, and just to create memories for all of us that we could enjoy great family time. We lost my oldest sister, Jenny, a long time ago, and I know many of you knew her very well. When Mom and Dad bought this, wasn't in very good shape, and they started renovating just this back part of the house. And we would come out here and have meals. What's Mom's favorite expression, Amy?
Food always tastes better at the farm.
Always tastes better at the farm. So,
should have gardened.
Right. I would camp out here. Dad built me a tree house. He expanded 2 ponds into 1 pond, and that became our swimming hole. And for years and years and years, we swam in that pond. I don't think I'd swim in it today. Wintertime meant he would get his truck out and he would pull us in a sleigh.
All the kids.
And you always wanted to be in the front, but that meant you were going to get really, really cold. But it was perfect. So I just want to spend a moment just acknowledging our parents and really what they created for us. We lost my mom in 1986, and it was really hard on us, and hard especially on my dad. He retired the next year, and a couple of years later, he moved in here. This was never really our home. This was more like a place we went on the weekends. That's when the place kind of changed a little bit. We maybe not as much socializing as we used to do. It was more like Dad's place. And if you walk in this door, that mustard colored chair is where he was always sitting, and it was always comforting to me to know that he was there. Caroline and I had our rehearsal dinner here in 1990. Another great memory that we had. I guess the next progress we made was an invitation to the PDR program. And there are probably many people here that created that, but there's 2 especially that I want to mention. Our County Judge Executive, Mary Diane Hanna. I mean, she's County Judge Executive, but that just is a small part of her contribution to this community, and especially this area. I don't even have any idea. She and Jenny were thick as thieves, and they were always protecting this area. The other one I don't see, but I know she's here, Gloria Martin. Gloria, council representative for eons. Again, that's great, but there's so much more to it than what we even know. So Gloria, Mary Diane, Jenny, I think talked Dad into doing PDR. He wasn't really on board with it at first. So then we got on board in 2007, November. And I think this farm was kind of highly sought after by the folks there. And it got a little bit more fanfare than maybe others would have. So we had a little ceremony out here November the 9th, 2007, cold November day. And Jenny was the star of the show. She was directing things. Mayor Gordon, you were here.
I was here.
You weren't mayor at the time, but you were representing council member, and it was, I've known Mayor Gordon a long, long time from church. absolute honor to have you. It was Mayor Newberry at the time, and he was quite taken with a little 3-year-old boy that I had with me, and that was Wesley. And he wasn't the only one taken with me, but anyway, got his picture in the paper the next day, and it's in the house, framed in the house. It's also in the book. So that's a very proud moment to us. So everything was great, and then sadly, my sister Jenny got sick and died the next year. So it's, again, really hard. But after a mourning period, I think my dad and my sisters and I, we were okay. Dad continued to live out here. For those of you who didn't know him, he kind of took pride in being very Spartan in his circumstances. He didn't want heat, he didn't want air conditioning, he didn't want any fanfare. He kind of took pride in the fact that he didn't need any of that. So he lived a few more years, mostly good until the last year, and then he moved in with Amy, and she took wonderful care of him, and we lost him in 2015. Then what did we do? We lost Mom, we lost Jenny, we lost Dad, and Amy, Leslie, and I didn't exactly know what to do with this place. But we knew we wanted to keep it. And so we got some great advice from another great gentleman here, Mr. Carl Maggard. He's here somewhere.
He's over here.
Okay. So I promise you we wouldn't be here if it weren't for Carl. Carl is about the most talented yet the most humble person you'll ever meet. He can fix anything, he can build anything. He went to work on this place. Ultimately mentored Wesley. Somebody else I need to mention who couldn't be here, he was at his grandchild's baptism, is John and Austin Kerr. They became our business partners, and the cattle that you see are not ours, they're John's. So John's not only a great friend, he's a great neighbor, great businessman, just great for the whole community. But anyway, Wesley and Carl got to know each other quite well working. Wesley started at 11 years old, started mowing this place on the zero turn. And then there were projects that need to be done. Carl didn't like climbing ladders as much as he used to, so Wesley did some of that. And their friendship has just been really wonderful to see. And I know you'll probably talk about it, Wes, but I think that's when Wesley got really interested in it. That's sort of my contribution to it. I think Wes is going to speak now.
To start, I want to mention my parents, Caroline and Arthur. Without them, this would not have been possible. They spent hours getting ready, getting chairs, tables, silverware, food. Without them, this would not have happened. And I'd also like to mention that May is Historic Preservation Month, and I'd like to acknowledge Dr. John Coleman, Dr. Zach Leonard, and Missy Patowski. Is that it? I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here today. To see so many friends and family here to celebrate means the world to me. Growing up on my grandfather's farm has been the greatest privilege of my life. He laid the groundwork for which everything I've been able to accomplish. His love for this farm was passed to his children and grandchildren. I have fond memories of coming up to Richland to see my grandfather, oftentimes bringing gallons of water to fill up the toilet in the winter's months, as he lived here year-round with no heat. Following my grandfather's death in 2015, Richland was largely left vacant. During that time, I began to explore, looking at the large halls filled with a lifetime of collecting, or hoarding, which had been done by my grandfather. I had always been fascinated by the place, and had harbored a dream of one day restoring it. But that largely stayed in the background for many years. In the summer of 2018, I began working on the farm with Carl Maggard, my Uncle Steve's brother. This work initially started with maintenance and fence repair, but then eventually became more detailed around Richland itself. The summer following my freshman year of high school, Carl and I replaced the roof on the smokehouse, repairing it and redoing the paint around the trim. Then the following summer, We meticulously scraped and repainted the 2 large porches on the house. These projects piqued my interest in learning the history of Richland, and I began to research the house starting with the most basic information which my family knew. The home was originally constructed by General James Shelby, a relative of Kentucky's 1st and 5th Governor, Isaac Shelby, and that my grandparents had purchased the farm from Mr. Luther Land. My initial research was largely ineffectual, turning up little, until in February of 2022, I discovered the Shelby family papers at the University of Kentucky Special Collections, and I excitedly told my Aunt Leslie that the 2 of us would make a trip to the King Library to search through them. We had no idea what we were looking for, just coming with the hope of finding any information about Richland. We found many items of interest which would prove valuable to my research later on. Following this discovery, I put the research onto the back burner as summer 22 came, and Carl and I began our first project inside Richland itself. From June to September, Carl and I worked on the bay window room, originally the Kincaid Banqueting Hall, the largest room in the house with towering 16-foot ceilings. This project revitalized my interest in the house, and I was determined to learn all that I could. During this project, my family was contacted by a man named Larry Childs, who informed us that he was the grandson of Luther Land, and growing up had spent much time at Richland. I was ecstatic to meet Larry. We spent several hours together, where he introduced me to his cousin, Lloyd Maury, and the pair of them provided me with vital information and photographs which would have been unobtainable otherwise. Following this, I made one more crucial discovery, another collection of family papers, this one housed at the Filson Society in Louisville. I then called my aunt, informing her we would be making a trip to the Filson. This collection was exactly what I had been looking for, dozens of letters written from Richland, each containing valuable information about the characters of each member of the Shelby family. Following this discovery, I began to play with the idea of writing a book on these people and the houses which have become my obsession. In December of 2022, I was introduced to Dr. James Birchfield, who has become a mentor to me. He introduced me to Miss Shelby Susan Clark, the woman who donated the Filson collection of papers. Miss Clark and I quickly became good friends, both of us fascinated by these people who lived over 200 years ago. Following this, Miss Clark made one more vital connection for me, introducing me to her distant cousin, Miss Matilda Fontaine Battle Moore, a lady as impressive as her name. Miss Moore's collection was as extensive as those held by the Filson and the University of Kentucky. By January of 2023, I had gathered a large amount of information on the Shelbys and their houses, and I began the writing process, a process in which Miss Clark was closely involved. Almost daily, I would send her my chapters for her to edit. I completed my final chapter in June of 2023. Then I began the process of editing and revising. This was aided by many kind people, many of which are here today, and they all have my gratitude. Chief among those are my Aunt Wesley Francis, as well as Dr. James Birchfield, who read over the manuscript on 3 separate occasions. Over the course of the last 2.5 years, I have met over 3 dozen people who descend from Shelbys or individuals who descend from those who own Shelby homes, many of which provided me with stories or pictures which are featured in my book. And for that, I would like to thank each and every one of them. I would like to extend a special thanks to my parents, to Miss Shelby Susan Clark, Dr. James Birchfield, Miss Matilda Fontaine Battle Moore, and Mr. Larry Childs, who passed last May. Without these people, this project would not have been possible.
Thank you very much, Wes. Caroline and Art, thank you for having us here today. We really appreciate it. It's an honor for me to be here. I have a few words and then I have something special. So our city is really blessed that during its 249 years of existence, various leaders have understood the value of remembering, documenting, and preserving history. Remembering, documenting, and preserving. That manifests itself in so many ways, such as events like the one I just attended this morning at McConnell Springs, celebrating Founders Day, such as the current project of digitizing all of Fayette County's land records so that they will be available online worldwide. And things like this, the reason we're here today, which is the publication of books to get our history down so people can read it for hundreds of years. So finally, I wanted to just mention back to the purchase of development rights. And I'm so grateful to the Francis family for being a PDR farm. When I first went on council in January of 1999, this woman I've never met was a council member, and her name was Gloria Martin. And I learned real quickly that I needed to do whatever she said was the right thing to do, or I'd never hear the end of it, right? And we were blessed, Gloria, to pass that rural land management ordinance and then go right straight the next year to the PDR ordinances. And that was, the PDR was passed in 2000, excuse me, the Rural Land Management Plan in 1999. And I give her so much credit because she currently chairs the Rural Land Management Board, which looks at all those applications for PDR farms. And she has a wonderful board, and they work really hard to manage this program. So that's about history, right? Preserving the farms with these fabulous world premier soils. And it's all part of this preservation. So I appreciate all of you who have been involved in that. And I just say, let's keep it rolling. We were here for the 20,000th acre, Caroline and Art. We're now at a little over 32,000 acres. So with that, I have a special presentation. One of the fun things I get to do is read and present proclamations. And this could be a surprise to Wes. I hope it is. Okay, good. Come on forward. This is special for Wes because this is a wonderful day to honor him and this new history that he has written, and we thank you so much. So here's how it goes. Whereas Wesley Francis is a dedicated historian and preservation enthusiast with a deep connection to his family's heritage, and whereas Wesley wrote the book, A History of the Shelby Family of Fayette County and Their Houses, and whereas growing up on his grandfather's farm, Richland, Wesley was captivated by the history and the charm of the Richland house. And whereas in 2022, Wesley embarked on a remarkable journey to restore the house, a passion that mirrored his late grandfather's restoration efforts several decades ago. And whereas over the course of the following 2 years, Wesley's pursuit of history extended beyond the Richland estate, encompassing 7 other Shelby houses and the lives of 14 members of the Shelby family. And whereas Wesley's dedication to preserving this history extended to collaborating with descendants of the Shelby family and former owners of the Shelby residences. And whereas 2024 marks the 200th anniversary of the Richland House, and whereas the city of Lexington, as well as Lexington-Fayette County government, commend Wesley on these achievements. Now, therefore, I, Linda Gorton, Mayor of Lexington, do hereby declare May 19th through the 25th, 2024 Wesley Francis Days in Lexington. You've got a long way to go. We're lucky he's young, right? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just going to switch. Let's do this, go over the how we're going to.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we have food.